quinoa. It's a healthy whole grain and it cooks really quickly. Let me show you how to do it. Hi, I'm Susan Bowerman, registered dietitian, and you know, quinoa has become very popular lately. It's a seed that we eat as a whole grain, and I'm going to show you very quickly how to cook it. I'm going to cook mine today with some vegetables in it. Normally, you might want to just cook it plain, but I want to fancy it up a little bit. I'm going to put a tiny little bit of olive oil into my saucepan and get it heating up. And what I'm going to add to my quinoa today, I just chopped up some vegetables. I've got some broccoli, some carrots, and some red peppers that I've diced up. You can use any vegetables you want. You can use zucchini, you can try tomatoes, you can try mushrooms, whatever appeals to you. There's no rules to this. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a handful or so of vegetables into my saucepan. And I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit and I'm going to start to saute it. And as this is starting to cook, one thing I was going to show you is that I'm using the white quinoa for my dish today. But I also have in a pile here black quinoa and red quinoa. So you can find different varieties in your store. Now the other thing that you need to know about quinoa is that some varieties of quinoa need to be rinsed before you actually cook them. And the reason for that is that quinoa has a coating on it that's a little bit soapy. Now, many of your packaged quinoas will already be rinsed, so you don't need to worry about it. This one's been rinsed. But if you're not sure, then ask at your grocery store if you're buying rinsed quinoa or not. And if you're not sure, just go ahead and rinse it anyway. Now, in terms of proportions, it's very simple. You're going to use twice as much liquid as you are quinoa. So I'm going to go ahead now and add my quinoa grain. Just give it a little stir. And what this does by stirring it a little bit is it's starting to toast these seeds a little bit, and it just brings out the flavor. And just for fun, I'm going to add a little bit of turmeric. It's a nice spice with some flavor and it adds a nice yellow color. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my liquid. Now I'm using chicken broth. You can use vegetable broth. You can use beef broth if you want to. You can use plain water, of course. The other thing you might want to try there we go. Sometimes people will use something like diluted tomato juice. There's all kinds of things you can do. And I'm going to turn my heat up. What I want to do is I want to bring this to a boil. And then once it boils, I'm going to turn it down to a simmer. And then I'm going to cover it and I'm just going to let it cook for about 10 to 12 minutes and then it's done. Okay, so while we're waiting for it to boil, I want to say a couple things about this. Now, if you're making just plain quinoa, that's fine. It's pretty easy. You're just going to not do that first step where you're going to put your vegetables in. You can just put your quinoa in your pan, twice as much liquid in your pan, bring it to a boil. That's the easiest way to cook it. The other thing I like to do with this is if I have any left over, I put it in the refrigerator and then the next day I can turn it into a salad. So it's like a grain salad, my vegetables are already in there, and I can add some protein to it. So if I have any leftover chicken breast that I've grilled, or if I have some shrimp that I've grilled, I can put that in there, even a can of tuna. And then I can just put a really light dressing on it and I have a really quick main dish lunch for myself that's got my whole grain and my vegetables and my protein. So it's really, really very versatile. The other thing you can do is you can make this exactly the way I'm making it, but you can make it in a skillet so that it's going to be a wider, flatter surface, and you can just put your protein right on top. You can put some thin sliced chicken breasts right on top and cook the whole thing together, and you've got a one-dish meal. So this is just about to boil, and as soon as it does, I'm going to turn the heat down. I'm going to put the cover on it, and then we're just going to let it simmer for about 10 to 12 minutes, and that's it. We'll be all done. So I'm just waiting until I see a nice full boil here. And what you'll find is when your quinoa is finished cooking, you'll look at it and you're going to see a little, if you look very closely, you can see a little spiral of the germ of the seed on the outside of the quinoa. And it's one of the reasons that it has a little bit of a crunch that makes it somewhat different from eating other grains. So you'll see that when the quinoa is cooked, and what the heat is doing is it's helping to bring that germ out from the seed. Okay, so we're just boiling now. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to put my lid on, and I'm going to turn my heat down, and I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. So it's been about 10 minutes and my quinoa is cooked, and the reason I know that is because I can look inside and I can take my fork and I can just fluff it up a little bit, and I don't see any liquid in the bottom of the pan. All the liquid's been absorbed by the grain. So it's ready. So let me just put a little bit out here on the dish for you so you can see it. It's so pretty because I've got this color in there from the vegetables and a little bit of that nice yellow color from the turmeric that I added. And again, if you were to look at this very closely, you could see that little germ around